What's up, Game Devs? T-Chan here, and welcome to episode 21 of Game Dev Loadout, where I chat with today's most experienced game developers 7 days a week. We will learn about their background, the challenges they faced, and the tools they use to reach success. And today's featured guest is Jaycee Salinas. Jaycee, it is go time. Are you ready?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm ready.
Awesome. He has been in the game industry for about 3 years and is the creative director of called&nbsp Studios. He started the studio after dropping out of Full Sail University online game design program and is now working on his own game called a Duel Hand Disaster's Trackher. So go ahead, Jaycee, give us a bit about your personal life and how you got started in the game industry.
Yeah, sure. So, like you mentioned, I went to school, and for me personally, it wasn't working. It was a complete waste of time. They weren't teaching me like anything about game design. So I basically dropped out in 2013. And I had a friend of mine who actually was going to go to E3 that year. So that was like the year that the PS4 and the Xbox One was coming out. Sony was in this like super like indie initiative kind of kick, right? So they were like showing off a whole bunch of like indie games and stuff like that. So I was super stoked. So I went with them, luckily. And that year, like it was basically like I had to make a decision. Since I had just dropped out of school, I had to make a decision. Was I going to write about video games or was I going to make a video game? So one thing led to another. While I was there, I met Nick Sutner, who later on became my account manager at Sony. At the time, obviously, I didn't know that, but we were just talking about, the indie initiative and stuff like that, things about the PSP, the PS Vita and everything. I mentioned my game design to him and how I started working on it through Game Maker and stuff like that. And what happened was just being at E3, you're obviously around like such awesome like energy about like making games and stuff like that. So when I came home, I think that's when I solidified my decision. I went with the easy one, right? Where I was like, I'll just make a video game then. So yeah, that was basically the start there in how I actually started working on the game. But so here's the kicker though. I had been working on the game in Game Maker because that's what I had. That's what I was working on. But when I had talked to Nick, they didn't support Game Maker on the Vita yet, or the PlayStation 4, for that matter. So I had to make the tough decision and I had to move over to Unity. So that's when I had to make the decision of like, holy crap, well, what engine do I go with? And Unity at that time was the best decision because it let me learn C# and stuff like that. And yeah, I got to learn like a 3D game engine. I basically just taught myself all of that like on the spot.
Now, how did you teach themselves that? Like, if people want to learn Unity, what would you suggest they use?
Well, the reason I went with Unity was because the community, again, at that time, it was way more productive than the Unreal community. So like you could find tutorials everywhere. If you Google search something that you wanted to know, if this worked in Unity or, how to do this or that, you would almost always find an answer. So that was why I went with Unity. And I basically, honestly, just went to their website because also on their website, they have, I think it's unity3d.com/learn. If I have the URL right off the top of my head. And they have like, granted by now, they have way more tutorials there than they did when I started. But they are super useful, man. Like you can learn so much by just following along with the tutorial and then typing out the code or whatever. I personally, I don't know if this is good advice for anyone else, but I personally liked typing out the code instead of just copying and pasting because I got to like see how the code was written, if that makes sense. I know the code is just there if you copy and paste it, but I like typing it out. Like it just, something about that worked in my head, the way I put everything together. I mean, that's just how I work, so it made sense to me. And then one thing led to another, and I bought books on Unity. I bought books on C# and stuff like that, just to get familiar with like, these things that they were talking about. They obviously don't have the time to explain them in those tutorials. So you just have to ask a question to yourself, right? Like, well, what the hell does this mean? Or what does that mean? And by asking questions, which is the most important part, one thing just leads to another, and you end up teaching yourself something.
There you go. See, you made the effort to go out there and learn everything. And like you said, Unity by now has a ton of tutorials, free too. And Unity is free itself as well. And then to take it further, you push yourself to buy books. You're showing gamers that, you had to take initiative if you want to teach yourself these things.
100,000,000,000%, dude. Absolutely. Like, you have to have that desire to learn. If you don't have that desire, then there are like 50 other people behind you that are going to take over. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
What are common mistakes, even at a pro level, that people make in game development?
So many, actually. But I think they're really all subjective. I as a person could criticize another video game for doing something I probably would have done different. That doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong, though, right? It's more, that's what I would do in my video game, I guess, right? Is like, if I was playing a similar game to mine and I saw someone do something that I thought was wrong, it's not so much that it's necessarily wrong. It's just that I wouldn't have gone that route. So that's why I'm making my game, so I could go my route with the way I wanted to do things.
There are a lot of similar games out there, but you always have to have that unique selling point. Like, what makes your game different from theirs?
Right. And if you don't mind me expanding on that just a bit, like, the thing is, it's also not necessarily doing it for the sake of, well, I got to be different. You know what I mean? It's for example, in my game, the leaderboards are erased every time you play a new game. And I get a lot of crap for that. Well, from developers, really, like fellow friends that I've made in the industry have told me that's a bad idea. But like, to me, like, that, in a way, the way my mind works anyway, too, is like, I think of that more as like, all right, well, now I know I'm doing something, not back to the right or wrong thing, but I know I'm doing something that I feel is right and justified, right? Because they're telling me this isn't the way I should do it. But I think this is what makes the game way more fun, for lack of a better word, right? And it's not for the sake of doing it. It's not like, oh, I want to be different, so I'm going to do this. It's like, no, I'm doing this because this is just the natural way I thought the game was going anyway. This is what I wanted it to do. But it's not the thing that these games normally do.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
You're following your vision. Totally. You're following your vision. Overall, what are your key principles for better game development? Like, what do you think streamline game development to make it easier, better, or better experience when developing games?
Well, it kind of goes with what I was just saying in a way, because the motto for my studio has always been gameplay first, ask questions later. And, I could go on about this for hours, but my basic point there is, if you're doing something and it's fun, keep going on that, and then worry about the consequences of it in the sense of, like, if you're going to add something to the game that makes it fun, but for whatever reason, like, say your game revolves around some kind of story, and whatever mechanic you just employed doesn't fit the story, then my thing is, like, find a way to make it fit your story, because the gameplay comes first. The game needs to be fun more than anything. And that's my opinion 100%. Like, it doesn't mean you have to follow it. I'm just saying that's the way I see it. Like, the gameplay comes first. I'm sick and tired of kind of playing games that, like, are super artsy, but they're not fun. There's nothing fun about them. And again, that's that developer's vision for whatever he was doing. But yeah, so don't expect me to play it just because you did something artsy. Like, I still want to play something fun.
Bro,
if that makes sense.
I completely agree with you. Gameplay first, because to me, a Mario game is a perfect example, because all the same stories is the same thing. You're just saving Princess Peach, but they have all these different gameplay elements to it, and that's what I absolutely love about video games, is to play games and have fun.
Yeah, and dude, actually, Mario is a really good example of that, because Mario's story is dumb as hell. Like, all it is it really is. It always just comes down to, like, Koopa took Bowser took the princess, blop. Like, that blop is just like, we don't know what the hell's going on, but this is a video game. You know what I mean? And then, like, that's it. Like, the middle piece of it, it's kind of like the middle part of the Oreo. Like, You want to eat the Oreo because that's the best part. The outside part can be anything. It could be a vanilla cookie. It could be anything. But the inside cream is like the best part of the cookie, you know?
Now let's take this to a more personal level, because
Sure.
creating a game can be very long and difficult, and I'm pretty sure you have some bad moments. So what is the worst moment of your career? Like that one moment that is still vivid in your mind. Be very detailed and give us that story.
Yeah, totally. So I actually, you nailed it by saying moments, plural, because there are a ton. But one of them I can think of like straight up is the first time I showed the game at PAX South, when PAX South 2016. That was the first like official moment where I was going to show the game like professionally, right? So I wanted everything to be like badass and like super perfect or whatever. So I basically had to, I was showing the game on the Xbox One dev kits. And this was like the moment in time where everything just like piled up on me in the sense of, I'm not a programmer. I'm not an actual game developer. I dropped out of school. Like these were all my decisions that led me to this moment where I couldn't figure out how to set up the dev kits. Like they needed internet. You needed to be able to access them a very specific way using like command line prompts and all sorts of stuff. And holy crap, dude, it was the day before the show. I didn't have a computer that ran the game well. The game was kind of, in a sense, optimized for the Xbox One because that's where I was programming it for the most at that time. So yeah, it was just the culmination of just being a complete imbecile and not being able to figure out what was wrong. Yeah, I don't want to get into super detail because I really just tore myself apart. My girlfriend was there, so if she was here, she could tell the story because holy crap was I pissed, man. Like not even just pissed, just like upset that like here I was thinking I was a game developer, like working on this game. And just the day before PAX South, the moment of me showing the game to a bunch of people, it was just the absolute worst moment of being able to show the game. Luckily, though, what we ended up doing was I had to move over. We actually just switched hotel rooms because the internet, I needed access to the internet because the computer I had also didn't have a connection, like the Ethernet port that I could use. Again, dude, it's too, I don't want to bore you with the actual details because it really is just dumb. But the idea was I needed internet. That was the fastest way I could fix what I needed to fix. I did that. We had to get a whole new hotel room that was a little further down than the hotel room we had. But the internet is basically what saved my life. And I got it all situated, got the game running, and the morning of the show, I took the dev kits in, set them up, and luckily, like, that whole crisis was averted. And the show went, like, phenomenally well. So it was, like, the complete, like, down, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
the absolute bottom of what you could feel, and then highlighted again by the coolest feeling you could have by showing the game to people and getting the response. Like, the rest of the show went great. That's what I'm saying. It was just like bottom to absolute peak. It was crazy.
See, there you go. You still had a happy ending in the end.
Yeah. And again, it's all ups and downs, dude. Like, there are other things that happened even after that, you know, have gone up and down. But yeah, again, my point about this whole thing is just to let people know that you are going to have those moments. You know, I've emailed people who have contacted me after going to, like, meeting me at places and stuff. And I tell them this, you know, like, they're looking to do a video game and they get frustrated. And it's like, yes, it's going to happen, dude. It's going to happen. You're going to feel like absolute crap. But if you keep at it, it'll be rad.
See, there you go. Yeah, game devs, you got to stay persistent. You know, of course, you're going to get demoralized. That's just a part of it. But the whole point is you got to stay on top of it. Like, you got to keep doing it.
Yeah. And you also have to be, like, realistic and pragmatic. Like, if you realize if it's blunder after blunder after blunder, then take a hint, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, I don't want people to think, oh, it's magical. Like, you do something and you go down to the bottom of the pit, you'll rise right back up every single time, because that's not necessarily true. So I don't want to paint it with this, like, you know, rose colored brush or anything. It just, you have to be willing to, you know, admit defeat when you have to, man. It doesn't necessarily mean give up, but it just means, like, if it's over and over and over and over again, then maybe something's wrong. But again, pull back. What is it that's going on? And then evaluate it and continue from there, right?
Exactly,
yeah, totally.
Exactly. Now,
absolutely.
What is the best investment you made? And it can be an investment of money, time, or energy. And how did you decide to make that investment?
I guess I would say PAX, man. Like doing an event like full 3 days on, because I had done events before that, like Indiecade and stuff like that, but they were little like 2-hour like lucky slots that I did, right? Of like I got chosen to show the game at this random event where it wasn't like officially, it wasn't like publicized or anything like that. It was just like, hey, they gave you 2 hours to show your game here, like do it. So I would have to say PAX, because it allowed me to learn and realize that showing the game to a wide swath of people, you can learn a lot and you can optimize the game by doing that. Granted, you could do that at home by play testing with a bunch of friends and stuff. But as I've always said, like as supportive as a bunch of my friends are here at home, it's really difficult to get them to really dedicate the time that most people at events are willing to dedicate to the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would say investing in paying for the booth at PAX, yeah, stuff like that, I guess.
Yeah, get that user experience, man, and get a lot of it, because PAX is huge. With a ton of people going there all the time now.
Yeah, and also really quick though, just to add on that is also it's more of my mentality of being a musician in terms of going on the road, like and touring and showing your stuff to people you've never met before. It's also like, showing it to people is cool, but it's more the idea of going to do something like that. Like, for example, when you go on tour with a band, touring is what makes or breaks a band, because it lets the band know how well all the band members work together, how they work under stress. Granted, again, for myself, it was just me, but it still let me know, like, if I still love doing this after 3 days by myself. Granted, my girlfriend was there to kind of back me up and stuff, but it like I don't have team members. It was just me showing the game, describing the game to people, losing my voice, giving it everything I can. After those 3 days, if you still feel as energetic coming home as you did when you first went, then that's a good sign.
That would make you even more motivated, because once you get your game tested at PAX and you see people's reaction, and hopefully it's a good reaction, a positive reaction, you're just going to get even more motivated to keep pushing forward.
Yeah, totally. And it could have been a bad reaction, but it's difficult to really kind of expand on like, oh well, yeah, it could have gone bad, because it didn't go bad, but at the same time, like it was just because the way I saw it, it was beneficial in every possible way. It wasn't necessarily that people were screaming for the top of the hills, oh, your game's awesome, your game's awesome. It's just what I got from it, what I saw people do by playing the game and stuff, So yeah, everyone's going to have a different experience, but it's always one of those, it's just like, do it at least once. It's super expensive, but yeah, it just lets you know how your team's going to work, how people react to the game. And then based off of that, you can judge whether you want to do it one more time. And then again and again and again, right? So yeah.
Definitely. Now, awesome. Don't forget Game Devs. You can check out gamedevloadout.com for all the show notes. You can also subscribe to my email list to get tips and updates. And now we have reached crunch time, the phase that game devs dread, but we are here to overcome it. Basically, Jaycee, I will ask quick questions and you'll be giving us a ton of valuable information in return. Are you ready to crush it and release the show?
Let's see, man.
Let's do it. What was holding you back from becoming a game developer?
Nothing. Outside of not knowing how to make a video game. Nothing. Yeah. It was basically like, honestly, that's why I make the panel. I do a panel called Make Games, Not Excuses, because
I like that.
Exactly. That was how I started. I was like, I need to make a game, not make an excuse. Whether I know how to make one or not is not the issue. It's getting started, right? So ask a question, start something. If you get stuck, ask another question. Yeah. So nothing was really stopping me. Like no one came to my house and said, hey, you can't make a game because of this, or you can't make a game because of that. I just had software and I taught myself how to use it. That was it.
What's a personal habit that contributes to your success?
Giving an absolute expletive.
Yeah.
You told me to censor myself. So yeah, I'm very open about saying things like that, man. So yeah, like absolutely care about what you're doing, because no one wants to hear someone describe a game they could care less about. You need to make a game that you are going to just, again, after 3 days of wasting your breath and your every ounce of energy that you have, if at the end of those 3 days you don't feel the same as when you walked in the very first day, that's going to show. So I think that's it. It's just dedication, pretty much.
Dedication. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Oh man, that one's tough. Because basically everything has been helpful in some form or another. I'll just say, when I showed the game at GDC at the Mega Booth, one of the things I realized from people was that it wasn't, I guess, direct advice, but it was seeing how people were reacting to the speed at which I had the quote unquote difficulty in the game. So just by watching people be a little overwhelmed by the rate at which enemies were spawning in, that helped me make a really big decision in the sense of how the game is paced. And ever since then, that has been a godsend. That has changed the game's dynamic in a way where now the player can activate the chaos on their own, which is something I never really thought of implementing, if that makes sense. It was, it just came from watching people play and thinking, holy crap, well, what can I do? And I basically just decided on doing that.
It's getting that user experience again. You gotta get there.
Yeah.
Gotta get that user experience. How has a failure set you up for later success?
I guess going back to the PAX South thing, knowing a little more about the hardware ahead of time before requesting to use hardware that I wasn't familiar with. Yeah, I that's what I can think of for that for that question. So now essentially what I do is, instead of showing on consoles, even though that's a lot easier because you just kind of have a build and it's easier to just have a thing that you could just put out and plug in. I've just gone with the PC, and it's usually a little more chaotic because you have to plug in a bunch more stuff than you would with a console, if that makes sense.
Share an internet resource we game devs could use.
A really good one, if you're using Unity, is blog.thenightsofunity.com. That is a really good resource for Unity, because they teach you about state machines, coroutines. That is a really, really cool website.
Say that website one more time.
Sure. Blog, B-L-O-G, of course, .thenightsofunity.com. And that's knights as in knights, Camelot and stuff like that.
I would definitely link that up. Now, this next question is a bit of a doozy, so take your time if you need to. Imagine you woke up the next morning in a brand new world and you knew no one. You still have all the experience and knowledge you currently have today. Your food and shelter is taken care of and you have a laptop. What would you do step by step on the path to become a great game developer?
Well, first of all, I would turn on the laptop, and if there were games on it, I would play them so I can start, getting the juices flowing, and then I would start working on something. I would probably just do exactly what I did this time. Just make something I wanted to see on the screen and have fun. I would grab a controller, start messing with sticks, start imagining what I could be doing, and just start building off of that. That's exactly what I did. I'm not a very structured person, Tony. The way I do things is very, very unprofessional. I don't really even know how to answer that question because I'm super scatterbrained. I just go with what I'm going with. I don't have a set structure in a way, but I do once I get started, like a flow, in other words, right?
Gotcha.
So that might be a terrible answer, but to me that's just the way I am, man.
No, everybody has their own way of developing effectively, and so there's nothing wrong with your way. You follow your vision and you just go at it. There's nothing wrong with that at all. And
totally.
Now we have reached the end, so go ahead and give a parting piece of guidance and how we can connect with you, and then we'll say goodbye.
Okay, sure. So you can actually reach me at askjaycee@askanenemy.studios.com, or on Twitter, you can follow me on askanenemy. And the one big piece of advice that I could say is ask a question. And that's why I'm giving you my information. If you ever have any questions, like I might not be the one person who could answer it, but I could probably guide you in a way to where you need to go. But the most important part is ask a question. So if you have a problem, the only way you're going to solve that problem is to ask a question. Don't be shy. Don't be scared. No one's going to think you're dumb. And if they do, that's their problem, not yours.
You are absolutely on point. You will never know an answer until you actually ask a question. And asking a question is the fastest way to know something instead of just like thinking about it all the time. So ask a question, hit up Jaycee. He's willing to help you out, and hit me up as well. I'm willing to help as much as possible. Jaycee, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. And for that, we are truly grateful. We look forward to your future work. And until then, we will catch you next time.
Thank you, man.
Thank you, Game Devs, for listening, and remember that knowledge is only potential power, execution is the game. Go check out my website for all the resources and past guests. You can also send me an email to tony@gamedevloadout.com. I would love to hear your feedback. Until then, keep making games. T-Chain out.